Well, we've already lived through one of the pitfalls of AI, which is that it can control what we see, it can control how we might choose to behave. Just looking at the spread of disinformation and fake news on social media platforms, where what we see is driven by these algorithms, and we've seen how that creates division within our society. That's a clear and present issue. Of course, there are other nightmare scenarios, the idea of developing weapons that can operate themselves autonomously without humans being able to be in the loop to prevent them going wrong. That's further down the track, but today I think we already see some of the real risks and harms.
Nicolas, Chaillan, from your perspective, do you share that assessment, or do you have a slightly different view of the nightmare scenario, if you like?
No, this is very correct, right? I think what's very different also when it comes to the military side of this is that China has the great advantage of mandating their companies to work with them, and there's no disparity of capability between the Chinese commercial side of the house and the Chinese government. Mm-hmm. When you look at the U.S. side, though, my whole point when I say we're losing against China is that, yes, the U.S. companies are leading, but there's no implementation of those capabilities inside of the military, and really we're getting behind. And in the meantime, you see, AI jets being flown and effectively the best U.S. pilots losing every single time against those AI capabilities, which effectively puts our nation at risk and is really ending up looking like an existential threat to our nation.
But Nicolas, do you think in that sense the Bill of Rights is just something the US and other Western societies can't afford to do at this point?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit short-sighted if we end up doing this on a per nation basis, right? If we don't ensure, very much like the nuclear treaties, that, and same for the space offensive side of the house, that these are not spread across all nations, particularly China and Russia, then we are shooting ourselves in the foot. And we have to find a balance between, of course, making sure that the ethics and the privacy and our really vision of our nation is really respected, but at the same time we don't want to end up having to learn Mandarin in a few years because we completely failed at protecting our nation as well.
Azeem?
Well, we have to have societies that we want to live in, that respect our rights. That's what we fight for and what we look to protect. And a digital Bill of Rights does that. It also helps us shore up some of the weaknesses. What we discovered over the last 4 or 5 years were that foreign adversaries could use social media platforms, amongst other things, to sow dissent and discord. And they use the AI systems within those platforms to magnify polarization. That's everything that any adversary wants. They want the civilians of their opponents to be arguing over vaccines and 5G and God knows what else before the battle starts.
But in terms of this contest for national advantage, if you like,
yes.
Do you have any sympathy with Nicolas's position that we can't afford to hang about and get the codes right, the ethical codes and the other steps? Or do you think that is an essential part in terms of the sequencing of the Western response to the Chinese AI challenge?
I think you have to do all of them together. And one reason you can't leave the ethics and the rights aside is that we live in this interconnected world. In the last few months, there's a Chinese company called BGI which helps doctors with genome sequencing, gene scans. That's a really important healthcare intervention, and that's used very, very widely in the West, in the US and across Europe. And recently, it's been rumoured that BGI is sending that information to the Chinese government, the genome sequences of people in the West. Now, we would be protected from things like that with an AI Bill of Rights, because that would enshrine the use of that type of data. So, of course, it's not enough, but it starts to shore up the weaknesses.
Nicolas, can you see that point? And can you see also the point about moral equivalence or moral parity, that actually there are important reasons why Western countries might want to put this in place ahead of China?
No, I mean, look, absolutely. Ethics are very important, right? And I'm certainly not disputing the fact that we need to make that a top priority. But like I said, it shouldn't be the only priority, and we shouldn't also dismiss the fact that, honestly, China will not care at all about this AI Bill of Rights whatsoever. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. In fact, they keep hacking and getting into systems continuously, putting critical infrastructure at risk in the United States again and again. We've seen it, countless times. So it's not some, new fancy AI Bill of Rights that's going to change their behavior unless they agree to do it. And even if they agree to do it, I would argue they might not even actually do it. They might do it in a way that's effectively behind the scene, where we can't even demonstrate that they are continuing to pursue these malicious behaviors. So we can also be short-sighted and just completely ignore the real world we live in. We all want to be in this dream world of everybody is nice and getting along together, but that's not the world we live in.